Welcome to this workshop where we make an owl wall hanging. So for starters, we have a template that you can download and print out. It gives you the shapes for cutting out the parts of the owl and tells you what we need. We need some air-dry clay, some water, a sponge, a roller, some brushes, a knife and a skewer, some textures, and if you don't have any textures you could use a leaf, and some little cutters if you have them. You can use other things that you find around, have some texture there, and of course we'll need some string to hang up our owl. I'm also going to use some paints. So let's get started. So we're going to open up our clay, unwrap it, and we're going to cut a piece of clay that is about the size of an orange. Make sure you wrap your clay up so it doesn't dry out. Now we're going to take our clay and we're going to roll it into a ball and get it nice and workable. And then we're going to use our roller or a rolling pin to roll out our clay. As you're rolling, make sure that you occasionally turn your clay over so that it doesn't stick to the board or to your table. Great. Now we're ready to go. So I've cut out the shapes from the template and now I'm just laying them onto the clay. And the feet. Great. Now I'm just cutting out around the shape of the template parts. Keep on cutting until all the parts are done. You can roll up all the scraps. Roll them up into a ball. And you can pop them back into your clay bag. Now that we have our pieces cut out, we're just going to make some holes for the string. So I'm using the back of a paintbrush and I'm pushing it through the clay and I'm making sure that it goes all the way through. It's really important that the holes are big enough for the string and that they go all the way through, or it's going to make it difficult to hang our owls up later on. Now I'm going to add some texture to the owl. So this is going to be the owl's body. What I might try doing is just have a play with some of the texture. That's what a leaf looks like. Might use the leaf for the wings. Just rolling that in. Looks a lot like a feather. So I think that's going to work really well. You don't have to roll them in, you can just push them in with your hands. Next I'm going to use some of the texture. You don't have to do this, you could also use the back of a paintbrush and add some lines to the front of the owl. So now I'm just going to add some texture to the eyes. So the owl has great big eyes. I'm just going to use the back of a knife and make some radiating lines around. Make the owl's eyes look nice and wide, a little bit surprised. So now we're ready to assemble our owl. Make sure our water is handy. If you want to, you can smooth the pieces out a little at this point. Work out where your piece is going to go. This will make it easier when it comes to sticking them together. We're going to use a skewer to scratch the back of the wing. And scratch the front of the owl where the wing's going to be stuck. Check again that they're in the right position. Make sure that each surface is scratched. Then we're going to use some water and wet the scratched area down on both pieces. And then we're going to firmly press the piece down. So we're going to do the same thing for the wings. And now the second wing. Now you can gently smooth the joins over if you'd like here. I'm just going to use my knife and smooth these pieces together a little. And now it's time to add those great big eyes. Great. The irises. Just going to add some water and pop them on. There we go. What I want to do now is I want to add some pupils. So I'm going to use the back of my paintbrush and just push them down. Now it's time for the owl's claws. So once again, just get them in the right position, and then we'll just do the scratching. So scratch and use some water. Just make sure it's well attached. Now the other foot. Bit of water. Yep. Touch it. Great. Just make sure they're really properly in place. You can let your owl dry now. Might take up to a day. It'll make it easier to paint. If you're really impatient, you could paint it now, but it might be a bit harder. So now we're ready to paint. I'm just using some acrylic paints, and I'm just using an old plate as a palette. So, first of all, I'm going to paint the eyes. I'll start with a blue colour. So if you've already let your owls dry, you can just let the paint dry and then we'll be ready to string them up. If your owl was already dry when you started painting, you can just let the paint dry. It might take an hour or two. Then you can string the owl up. So I'm just using some string and putting it through the holes in the owl's ear. On the other hand, if you painted your owl while it's wet, you will have to wait a while now for it to dry before you can string it up. You definitely want to make sure it's really dry before you string it up. Otherwise, it might fall apart when you try to hang it. Make sure they're really dry before you hang them up. Thanks for being part of this workshop, and I hope to see you in the studio soon.